In my previous life, my younger sister married the second prince and bore him 5 healthy sons in quick succession. Meanwhile I, the crown princess with my noble bloodline, struggled for 3 agonizing years to give birth to just one frail daughter. The crown prince publicly humiliated me, calling me a barren disgrace who couldn't produce an heir. Since daughters held no value for the throne, he flew into a murderous rage and killed my baby girl right before my eyes. I died from the overwhelming grief and fury. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of the imperial consort selection ceremony. I watched coldly as Crown Prince Marcus unhesitatingly pulled my younger sister, Tanya-chan, to his side. In that moment I understood, he had been reborn too. He believed that switching to a different woman would grant him the sons he desperately craved, completely unaware that we Chan daughters possessed an exceptionally fertile constitution. Conceiving and bearing children came as naturally to us as breathing. The real problem lay with his depleted masculine essence, which made it nearly impossible for any woman to become pregnant by him. I lifted my gaze to observe the magnificent golden dragon aura swirling around the emperor, then stepped forward with graceful determination and bowed deeply. Your Imperial Majesty, this humble subject has long admired you from afar. I beseech you to grant my heart's desire. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy listening. All the princes had reached marriageable age, and the grand hall was filled with the empire's most prestigious young ladies. Choose according to your heart's true desires, the emperor proclaimed from his throne, his voice resonating with the commanding presence of a mature sovereign. His Majesty Noah had just celebrated his 36th birthday, radiating the powerful magnetism of a man in his absolute prime. The moment those words left his lips, Crown Prince Marcus strode swiftly toward Tanya, grasping her hand possessively. Father, your son desires Miss Tanya, the Prime Minister's eldest daughter. His declaration sent shockwaves through the assembly. Here was the Crown Prince, with countless legitimate daughters of noble houses to choose from, yet he insisted on taking a concubine-born daughter as his primary consort, an unprecedented breach of protocol. But I immediately comprehended the situation. Marcus had also been reborn. He gripped my sister's hand tightly while she leaned into his embrace, shocked and delighted, their eyes locked in an intimate gaze that excluded the rest of the world. The emperor frowned with visible concern. Marcus, the imperial astrologer, prophesied that the prime minister's legitimate daughter carries the heavenly phoenix destiny. I believe Visha would be far more suitable for you. Before His Majesty could finish, Marcus interrupted boldly. Father, Tanya is also a daughter of the Prime Minister's house. Who can definitively say the Phoenix destiny doesn't belong to her? How can celestial mandate be determined by mundane distinctions between legitimate and concubine-born status? As he spoke, his eyes flickered toward me with barely concealed contempt. I understood perfectly. In our previous life, it was precisely that prophecy of heavenly mandate that made him choose me as crown princess without hesitation. He had proclaimed that such noble destiny could never belong to a concubine's daughter. Yet after our marriage, when I failed to produce a male heir, I became the capital's laughingstock while he suffered humiliation. Meanwhile, Tanya had married the second prince and delivered one healthy son after another, elevating her husband's political standing dramatically. Now, given a second chance, how could Marcus possibly repeat his mistake? Seeing Marcus's unwavering determination, Tanya was moved to tears. From childhood, she had possessed beauty and talent equal to mine, but her concubine-born status meant she lived perpetually in my shadow, harboring deep resentment. Marcus's words had clearly touched her wounded heart. She straightened proudly and met my gaze, her eyes gleaming with smug triumph. Recognizing Marcus's resolve, the emperor ceased his objections and issued an immediate decree establishing Tanya as crown princess. Then it became time for the other princes to select their consorts. All the princes, observing that the crown prince had chosen the prime minister's concubine-born daughter, wisely selected consorts of even lower status than Tanya, careful not to overstep. Soon, all the young ladies had found their matches, leaving only me standing alone in the grand hall. Tanya regarded me with a mocking smile, her expression dripping with derision. At that moment the emperor descended from his throne, approached me directly and asked gently, Visha, do you have someone special in your heart? Shall uncle arrange a match for you? As the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter with a princess for a mother, my status was unmatched throughout the entire capital. It would be difficult to find any woman more distinguished. Now that all the princes had chosen consorts, leaving only me unmatched was deeply improper. As for the familiar address uncle, it stemmed from our first meeting years ago at the Prime Minister's manor, when I had playfully called him that. In truth, he was merely 12 years my senior. Now, using this intimate address before the entire court was clearly meant to show me special favor. I raised my head to study the man before me. His handsome features were extraordinarily striking, and his presence was enveloped in swirling golden dragon aura. A sudden flash of inspiration struck me. The Empress's throne had remained vacant for so long. Wasn't it precisely reserved for someone bearing my heavenly phoenix destiny? I smiled with demure grace, bowed respectfully, and spoke softly. Visha has long admired your imperial majesty. I humbly beseech your majesty to grant my deepest wish. Noah appeared genuinely stunned, lowering his voice. Visha, don't act rashly. I am your uncle. Before he could finish his objection, I raised my head and blinked innocently at him, allowing tears to well naturally in my eyes as I spoke with a trembling voice. Doesn't uncle need Visha either? He immediately showed signs of panic, gently reaching out to wipe away my tears. Don't cry. Please don't cry. I agree to your request. Everything will be as you wish. I stopped crying instantly, the corners of my mouth lifting in a triumphant smile. He remained unchanged, unable to bear seeing me shed tears. Noah took my small hand before everyone present and specially summoned the Imperial Herald to announce an official decree, selecting an auspicious date to welcome me into the central palace as Empress. Marcus stared at me intently, his eyes filled with darkness. Tanya beside him also displayed obvious unwillingness. His gaze fell upon our intertwined hands, and he spoke coldly. Father, please reconsider carefully. The Empress position has remained vacant for years. Such a monumental decision cannot be made casually. Moreover, Miss Chun is the same age as your son. Looking at her frail, delicate constitution, I fear she may prove unable to shoulder the tremendous responsibilities of managing the 6 palaces. I curved my lips into a slight mocking smile. Does the Crown Prince suggest that His Majesty is too aged and unworthy of this subject? Or is the Crown Prince afraid that in the future, this subject might bear sons for His Majesty in the Central Palace, thereby threatening your position as Crown Prince? Noah's expression immediately darkened as he shouted, "Insolent! When I choose an Empress, do I require your approval?" Marcus fell silent, though his glance toward me brimmed with resentment. I felt secretly delighted. At this moment, he must feel worse than if he had swallowed live insects. His former crown princess from the previous lifetime had now become his stepmother. Who could possibly tolerate such an unbearable situation? As we were departing when no one else was near, Marcus approached me with a half-smile. Visha-chan, don't delude yourself into thinking you can bear sons for the Central Palace. You lack that destiny. The Crown Prince position can only be mine. I shrugged indifferently and returned to the Prime Minister's manor with Tanya. News of Tanya becoming Crown Princess had already reached her birth mother, Diana. The moment I stepped from the carriage, I saw her craning her neck in eager anticipation. Though Diana enjoyed favor in the manor, she was ultimately just a concubine, always forced to remain cautious and respectful beneath my mother's authority. Now that her daughter had not only participated in the consort selection alongside the legitimate daughter but had even surpassed her to become crown princess, Diana could finally hold her head high. She grasped Tanya's hand and declared loudly, "My good daughter, I always knew you possessed exceptional fortune." Then she turned toward me. I wonder which prince Miss Visha was selected by? Though the status surely cannot compare to crown princess, being a prince's consort remains quite respectable. Miss shouldn't feel too melancholy. Seeing Diana's triumphant loss of composure, Tanya felt somewhat uneasy and quickly covered her mother's mouth. "Mother, please say no more." I simply found it amusing. Tanya's appointment as crown princess had been announced by Noah on the spot, but establishing an empress required approval from the ancestral temple before being publicly proclaimed. Diana naturally knew nothing of this development. She assumed I had been married to some prince with inferior status, hence her audacious behavior. What do you mean? Now that you are crown princess, I can't speak 2 sentences? This ungrateful child. I've been cautious all these years for your sake, and now when I finally have a chance to speak freely, I'm still being silenced. What a waste raising you was. Diana glared angrily at Tanya. Tanya was so furious her teeth ground together as she lowered her voice. Sister is the Empress personally appointed by His Majesty. Diana immediately froze, her complexion cycling from pale to flushed before she fell to her knees with a heavy thud, trembling as she begged my forgiveness. I paid it no mind, merely cast Tanya a cold glance, and returned to my chambers. Soon after, the imperial edict establishing the Empress was officially issued. Noah's gifts flowed like water into the Prime Minister's manor, and everyone throughout the capital praised His Majesty's infinite favor toward this new Empress. Meanwhile, ever since becoming Crown Princess, Tanya went out with Marcus every single day. Each time she returned to the manor late at night, she wore an expression of shy satisfaction. I could easily guess what they were doing. Marcus was desperately impatient, so hungry he couldn't wait any longer to secure an heir. 10 days later, Tanya was carried to the Eastern Palace in an elaborate bridal sedan. Having lived through one lifetime already, Marcus remained obsessed with producing heirs. According to palace servants from the Eastern Palace, after the wedding ceremony, Tanya received extreme favor, being thoroughly exhausted for several days until she couldn't even leave her bed. Hearing this news, I couldn't suppress my laughter. In the previous life, he had blamed me entirely for our inability to produce sons. I'm afraid this time he'll face bitter disappointment again. He believed that being with Tanya would grant him sons, completely unaware that we Chun daughters were naturally blessed with extraordinarily fertile constitutions. Pregnancy and childbirth came as easily to us as turning our palms. That's precisely why she could bear a houseful of children for the second prince in our previous life. But Marcus's masculine essence was depleted, making it extremely difficult for any woman to conceive by him. Even someone with a constitution as fertile as mine had been wasted on him. In my previous life, watching him suffer daily over the matter of children, I took dangerous risks and used forbidden shortcuts, employing the Chun family's secret fertility methods. For 3 consecutive years, I consumed bitter, nauseating essence-locking medicine, barely managing to give him one daughter. Who could have known the daughter would be born weak and sickly, despised by him to the point that in his drunken madness, he killed the child. My poor little treasure, arriving in this world only to depart again so quickly. Having murdered my child, I would definitely make Marcus pay 1,000, 10,000 times over. Shortly after the 6th lunar month came my grand wedding to the emperor. I wore the magnificent phoenix crown and brilliant crimson robes, meticulously made up, sitting in the bridal chamber waiting. Before long, Noah entered with slightly unsteady steps, reeking of ceremonial wine, and sat beside me. He whispered in my ear, "Visha, marrying me, have I wronged you? You're in the very bloom of youth while I've already aged." I raised my head and looked firmly into his eyes. "Your Majesty, Visha truly cherishes you." I wasn't deceiving him. From our very first meeting, when he gently handed me that bright red apple, my heart was moved. At that time, I didn't know he was the supreme ruler of the empire. I simply thought he was an honored guest of father's, innocently calling him uncle, which made my parents pale with fright. But he seemed to like it immensely, smiling until his eyes curved into crescents. Later, when I married the crown prince and remained childless for years, everyone claimed it was my fault. Only Noah never blamed me, patiently comforting me instead. Such a wonderful man. How could I possibly let him slip away again in this lifetime? Hearing my heartfelt confession, joy briefly flashed in his eyes but quickly dimmed. "Little Visha, you only like your uncle as family, not as a man." I hastily interrupted him, pressing my lips to his in a kiss. Right or wrong, uncle should experience for himself. I no longer hesitated, immediately removing my wedding garments and pressing him beneath me. Fire blazed instantly in his eyes as if he wanted to devour me whole. "Little temptress, it's you who has bewitched me. Don't regret it later." I watched the bed curtains above sway rhythmically, finally becoming intoxicated and drowning in his passionate embrace. That night, the palace maids serving outside our chamber were exhausted, going in and out to change the bathing water 7 times. The next morning, news of the emperor and empress's passionate devotion spread throughout the entire court and harem. In the blink of an eye, I had resided in the central palace for over a month. Due to my exceptionally fertile constitution, I conceived with remarkable ease. After just 1 month of favor, I already carried a little prince in my womb. If Marcus discovered I was pregnant, would he go absolutely mad? Today, I deliberately waited for him along the path he must take to the imperial study. The crown prince was heir to the nation, so Noah paid special attention to his education, summoning him to the imperial study every day after morning court ended. Sure enough, before long, Marcus appeared exactly as I had predicted. Upon seeing me, his eyes held undisguisable hatred, yet he still had to respectfully bow and address me. Stepmother. He bowed formally, and I deliberately made him remain standing there for an extended time. He seemed to sense the hostility emanating from me and straightened up without waiting for my permission to rise. I coldly reprimanded, "Insolent! Does the crown prince look down upon this empress?" Seeing no one around, Marcus began showing his true nature. "So what if I do? Don't think being empress makes you so noble. Once I ascend the throne, you'll only be able to live under my complete control." He appeared smug, completely failing to notice the flash of bright yellow dragon robes at the corridor corner. I deliberately lowered my voice, my eyes full of provocation. "Is that so? Is the crown prince absolutely certain of a smooth ascension?" He frowned, pointing his finger threateningly at my face. "What exactly are you implying?" Before he could react, I deliberately fell backward in the direction his finger pointed. From behind, it would appear exactly as if he had pushed me down. Before I could hit the ground, a familiar figure rushed out urgently, catching me tightly in his protective arms. Before I could fully recover, I was already safe in Noah's embrace. I cried out in deliberate pain, "Your Majesty! The crown prince pushed your consort. My stomach hurts terribly." I moaned weakly while Marcus hastily explained, "Father, your son did no such thing. This woman is deliberately framing me. She clearly fell by herself." The eunuch standing nearby pointed in horror at my dress, shouting loudly, "Look quickly! Her Majesty is bleeding." Noah's gaze immediately dropped, seeing the shocking dark crimson bloodstain spreading across my gown. He completely lost control, backhanding Marcus with 2 fierce slaps across the face, then urgently summoned the imperial physician. The imperial physician frowned deeply, his hand trembling as he felt my pulse, cold sweat beading on his forehead. "What exactly is wrong with the empress? It was merely a fall. Why is there bleeding?" Noah's expression was terrifyingly dark, cold air enveloping the entire hall. Seeing the imperial physician's prolonged silence, Marcus laughed coldly. "Father, your son truly never touched her. She definitely fell deliberately to frame me, and that blood must have been prepared beforehand." The imperial physician suddenly prostrated himself before Noah, shouting loudly, "Congratulations, Your Majesty! Her Majesty the Empress is with child." Hearing this announcement, Noah was extremely excited. Though he already had several princes from previous consorts, the harem had been without news of pregnancy for an extended time. I had only recently married and was already pregnant. It was truly beyond imagination. Marcus was struck utterly speechless, swallowing back his unfinished words, his expression one of complete disbelief as he muttered, "Pregnant? How is that even possible? She isn't." Noah heard every word clearly, glaring and shouting, "I may no longer be young, but I'm not yet at the point where I cannot make a consort pregnant. Do you truly wish that I cannot produce legitimate children?" Marcus hastily protested his innocence, but Noah paid no attention, turning instead to question the imperial physician about the condition of the child in my womb. After confirming that both mother and child were safe, he finally felt somewhat relieved. "Then why hasn't the Empress awakened yet?" Noah asked with concern. The imperial physician sighed deeply. "Her Majesty's body is naturally delicate, and she's newly pregnant. She should be carefully nourished and rested. Today's sudden fall and the tremendous shock she endured seem to have trapped her consciousness in frightening nightmares. She must be meticulously tended from now on, or both mother and child will face grave danger." Noah turned to look at Marcus, speaking with icy coldness. Crown Prince, you dared to harm the Empress. If anything happens to the little prince, I will depose you without hesitation. Marcus turned frighteningly pale, trembling as he defended himself. Father, she spoke provocatively first, claiming I was unfit to be crown prince. Moreover, I truly didn't push her. At this moment I, who had been pretending unconsciousness, suddenly jerked awake, immediately throwing myself into Noah's protective arms and sobbing. Your Majesty, the crown prince wanted to harm our child. The crown prince also declared that even though I'm empress, I'll still have to depend on his breath for survival after he ascends the throne. Noah comforted me tenderly, speaking gently. Don't be afraid. With me here, no one can harm you or our child. He looked at the crown prince and snorted coldly. You speak of ascending the throne? Now the empress carries the legitimate son of the central palace. You'd best understand your position. I can establish you as crown prince, and I can just as easily depose you. At this moment Marcus was completely bewildered. He had only been made crown prince due to being Noah's eldest son. He possessed no outstanding military achievements and no powerful external family supporting him. Now the empress was pregnant, and he was implicated in attempting to harm the imperial heir. His position as crown prince was fundamentally shaken. In the end, Noah showed a degree of mercy, only punishing him with house arrest and stripping away his authority over state affairs. But being punished this severely precisely when I became pregnant was enough to keep him sleepless with worry. All of this was merely a small greeting gift I was presenting him. He wasn't entirely wrong. The blood on my dress had indeed been prepared beforehand. I possessed a special constitution where once pregnant, the fetus remained as stable as a mountain, which is precisely why I dared to gamble, using the child in my womb as leverage to scheme against Marcus. When the palace attendants escorted him away, his eyes looking at me were filled with venomous, murderous hatred. Meanwhile, Noah, after learning of my pregnancy, became even more tender and attentive. All kinds of precious rewards continuously flowed into my palace. After safely passing through the crucial first 3 months of pregnancy, fearing I would become bored during my confinement, he personally arranged various elaborate banquets, inviting the noble ladies of the capital into the palace every few days to chat and keep me company. Tanya, with her status as crown princess, was naturally included on the invitation list. That particular day happened to coincide with Noah being free from court duties, so he insisted on accompanying me to the banquet. Marcus had also been released from house arrest by then, and came to the palace with Tanya. Today's entertainment featured an exotic new dance from the Imperial Music Bureau. The dancers wore gorgeous, revealing costumes, performing barefoot on the elevated platform. Occasionally, some bold ones would flirt outrageously with the princes seated on the high dais. Everyone focused intently on enjoying the performance, but Noah's eyes never left me from beginning to end. He constantly selected choice morsels of food for me and tenderly wiped my mouth. Before long, the small plate in front of me had accumulated into a veritable mountain of delicacies. I helplessly supported my forehead, laughing with embarrassment. Your Majesty, do you see Visha as a pig being fattened for slaughter? Noah didn't mind at all, coaxing and practically forcing me to eat a fresh lychee fruit. This intimate scene fell into the eyes of the other prince's consorts, immediately raising a wave of envious commentary. Father and mother truly share deep affection. It really makes us sons admire them endlessly. Indeed, indeed. Father usually speaks so little, yet his gentle care for mother is extraordinarily touching. The harmony between emperor and empress is truly a magnificent blessing for our entire nation. Being teased among so many people made me blush deeply, but I didn't miss the dark, resentful look that flashed through Marcus's eyes, nor the unwillingness and loneliness clearly visible on Tanya's face. Since marrying Marcus, she had been extremely favored, becoming the object of intense envy for countless noble ladies throughout the capital. Tanya had completely transformed from her previously timid demeanor as a concubine's daughter in the prime minister's manner. Her words and actions were now full of imperious authority. I heard she relied on her favored status to act arrogantly, severely disciplining the concubines in the Eastern Palace wherever she went. I secretly smiled to myself. She was utterly foolish. Marcus favored her only because he desperately hoped she would produce an heir first to consolidate his precarious position as crown prince. But she mistakenly believed she had married exceptionally well, completely drowning in the honeyed trap he had carefully painted for her. Now I was about to give birth while Tanya, despite possessing a naturally fertile constitution, still showed absolutely no signs of pregnancy despite considerable time having passed. Marcus was clearly running out of patience, becoming increasingly cold and distant toward her. How could Tanya possibly bear such a drastic change in treatment? The evidence was obvious. Just moments ago during the dance performance, Marcus's lustful eyes never left the stage, not even glancing at the succulent shrimp that Tanya had personally and laboriously peeled for him, causing her profound embarrassment. After the banquet concluded, Marcus strode away without any regard for Tanya struggling to follow behind him in her elaborate court dress. Less than 2 days later, scandalous rumors spread throughout the entire capital that the crown prince was conducting an illicit affair with an exotic dancing girl. Those women who had once envied Tanya suddenly turned to pitying her instead, spreading countless additional rumors claiming the relationship between crown prince and crown princess had cooled dramatically because the crown princess was useless and couldn't produce a prince. They also whispered that to force her to conceive quickly, the crown prince made her drink bitter medicinal tonics every single day, causing her to lose her appetite and sleep poorly, visibly withering away. Before long, all the other princes' consorts who had married at the same time as me announced joyful news one after another. They would occasionally gather in my palace chambers to discuss pregnancy care together. The atmosphere was always joyful, harmonious, warm, and wonderfully peaceful. That particular day, Tanya came to visit, which surprised me greatly. She had been suffering tremendously over her infertility and felt deeply sad seeing other women pregnant, so she hadn't visited my palace for quite some time. When I saw her, I was even more profoundly shocked. She had become gaunt to the bone, completely lacking the radiant glow of a newlywed bride, looking instead like a withered woman who had recently experienced profound mourning. With just one glance, I understood completely that she had suffered considerably beside Marcus. I quickly dismissed all my other attendants. Tanya looked at me and smiled with bitter irony. "Visha, seeing me in this miserable state, you must be immensely pleased, aren't you? Do you know how ecstatically happy I was when the crown prince chose me? I genuinely believed becoming crown princess would finally allow me to suppress you after enduring years of resentment, living in your shadow. I never expected you would immediately become empress instead." After that initial disappointment, I was still happy because the crown prince treated me with such gentleness and passion. I foolishly thought heaven had taken pity on me and granted me a wonderful husband. But who could have known that after learning I couldn't bear children, he became increasingly cold and cruel. Do you know how unbearably bitter those bowls of medicine taste? He looks at me now with pure disgust, openly flirting with courtesans rather than stepping foot in my chamber. Speaking of this humiliation, her eyes turned red and tears flowed continuously down her hollow cheeks. Everything she spoke of, I naturally understood with crystal clarity. The profound suffering she had endured, I had tasted completely during my first lifetime. She sniffled pathetically and hesitantly opened her mouth. "Your Majesty, please help me. I heard from Mother that the Chun daughters are naturally blessed with exceptionally fertile constitutions, and there exist even secret fertility enhancement methods. I desperately beg Your Majesty to share this knowledge with me so I can finally bear a child for the crown prince. These past months, I truly cannot endure this torture anymore." Well, calculating the timeline carefully, before my rebirth, they had been married nearly a year. At this exact point in our previous life, she was already preparing to give birth to twin boys for the second prince. But now her womb remained completely empty. No wonder Marcus was pressuring her to this desperate extent. Seeing Tanya's unwavering determination to bear children for Marcus despite everything, I could only shake my head and sigh deeply. "Sister, we Chun daughters are indeed gifted with unique constitutions, and there truly exists medicine to dramatically aid conception. However, this medicine possesses extremely intense, dangerous properties. It must be consumed continuously for 49 full days to prove effective. Are you absolutely certain Marcus is worth such an extreme sacrifice?" I tried earnestly to persuade her to abandon this dangerous path because I too had once been stubbornly determined to produce children at any cost, ultimately pushing both myself and my baby to premature death. I desperately didn't want to see her follow that same tragic path. She bit her lip firmly and nodded with resolute determination. Actually, even without producing children, you remain the crown princess. Moreover, the one who cannot produce children is the crown prince himself, not you. If you cannot conceive by him, neither can anyone else. Why take such terrible risks with your health? She laughed bitterly through her tears. Unexpectedly, in this entire world, only you would truly believe me and defend me. Your Majesty has been treasured and protected since childhood, and wouldn't fully understand my desperate feelings. I worked so incredibly hard to obtain everything I have today. I absolutely cannot let it slip away. Bearing a child represents my only remaining chance to completely turn the tables in my favor. Seeing her mind was irrevocably made up, I leaned close to her ear and whispered the Chan family's closely guarded essence-locking prescription in careful detail. I repeatedly warned her with utmost seriousness that this dangerous medicine must be taken for exactly 49 consecutive days without fail, and must be consumed immediately following intimate relations. After ingesting it, the pain would be heart-piercing and agonizing, making one desperately wish for death over continued life. She frowned deeply, gritted her teeth with determination, and accepted the formula. Then she solemnly kowtowed with a resounding thud against the floor, sincerely expressing her profound gratitude before departing. Soon the time for my own delivery arrived. Noah paced nervously outside the delivery chamber, practically wearing a path in the marble floor. Besides him, there was another person waiting with bated breath, Marcus. He was absolutely terrified, fearing desperately that I would successfully give birth to a prince. Having experienced childbirth before in my previous life, I was mentally prepared for everything, making this time considerably easier. Moreover, my special constitution made my physiology particularly and uniquely suited for reproduction, so the pain was significantly lighter than for ordinary women. I groaned softly just once, my belly emptied completely, and the baby's vigorous cries echoed powerfully throughout the delivery chamber. Clearly an exceptionally healthy child. I breathed an enormous sigh of relief. You must understand that during my first life, my little treasure had been born dangerously weak, her cries even softer than a newborn kitten's, absolutely heartbreaking to hear. Noah finally couldn't restrain himself any longer and rushed straight into the delivery chamber despite ancient taboos forbidding men from entering. The head midwife immediately carried the baby to him with great ceremony. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Her Majesty has given birth to a beautiful princess." Noah appeared stunned for a brief moment, then burst into genuinely delighted laughter. "Wonderful. A daughter is also wonderful. As long as mother and child are both safe and healthy, everything is wonderful." He carefully carried our daughter to me, tenderly wiping the perspiration from my forehead. "Visha, you've worked so hard. You've given me a precious little princess. I'm infinitely grateful." I smiled weakly, lowering my head to gaze at the baby nestled in swaddling clothes, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. This child looked exactly like my little treasure from the previous life, except she was extraordinarily healthy, just born and already waving her tiny fists energetically with remarkable vigor. Indescribably adorable and perfect. She absolutely must be my little treasure reincarnated, finding her way back to me again. This time I would definitely protect her with everything I possessed. Noah also loved this child with overwhelming devotion, immediately decreeing at her full-month celebration to formally bestow upon her the prestigious title of Princess Aurora. You must understand that according to strict imperial regulations, princesses typically only received official titles upon reaching adulthood. Yet she was being honored at merely 1 month old, clearly demonstrating how extraordinarily high her position was in Noah's devoted heart. Even so, malicious whispers still circulated that though mother and child enjoyed tremendous favor, without producing a prince, we still fundamentally lacked essential support and security. However, most guests still raised their ceremonial cups to congratulate me warmly. Only Marcus observed the proceedings with visible contempt and barely concealed hostility. Beside him stood Tanya, who had recently become pregnant after enduring so much suffering. Marcus stepped directly before me, embracing Tanya with exaggerated tenderness, speaking provocatively in a deliberately low voice calculated for my ears alone. "Stepmother, didn't you boldly declare before that you would bear a legitimate son for the Central Palace? Where exactly is he? In the end, you only produced a useless daughter. What will you possibly use to compete with me for the crown prince position? My crown princess is exceptionally obedient. This time, she will definitely bear a fine imperial grandson." Ever since I had given birth to a daughter instead of a son, Marcus seemed to have lifted an enormous weight from his oppressed heart. His mood improved dramatically, and his treatment of Tanya changed noticeably for the better. In the days following her pregnancy announcement, he favored her even more intensely than during their honeymoon period, their displayed affection seeming like passionate newlyweds, even more ardent than before. Seeing Marcus speak so harshly and cruelly to me, Tanya felt somewhat ashamed and quickly pulled him away from the gathering. I watched her increasingly gaunt, suffering figure retreating, thinking of all the tremendous torture she had endured just to become pregnant, and my heart suddenly ached with genuine pity for her fate. The time following my delivery passed remarkably quickly, and in what seemed like a blink, Tanya's own delivery time arrived. The addition of new members to the imperial family should naturally have been cause for joyous celebration. However, the child she bore immediately sent Marcus into an absolutely thunderous volcanic rage. It turned out that Tanya had given birth to an albino boy, a child with strangely pale, almost translucent skin that appeared deeply unnatural and disturbing. Marcus flew into an uncontrollable rage, striking her viciously and loudly accusing her of committing adultery, wanting to immediately throw the bizarre-looking child into the palace lake to drown. Tanya desperately snatched up the baby and, despite her severely weakened post-birth condition, rode urgently to the palace seeking His Majesty's intervention and justice. "Father, the Crown Prince wants to murder this innocent child. Father, please make the righteous decision. Please save my baby." Noah had never personally witnessed such an unusual child either, immediately summoning the imperial physician to the throne hall for examination. The imperial physician, standing before the entire assembled court, took blood from both Marcus's fingertip and the small child's, carefully dropping them into a ceremonial water basin. The blood samples would either merge, confirming blood relation, or separate, proving no familial connection. Marcus insisted with absolute conviction, "No need to perform this test. I have black hair, black eyes, and completely normal skin. I absolutely could not have fathered such a monstrous-looking creature. This shameless, loose woman must have been promiscuous everywhere, corrupting and polluting the pure imperial bloodline. Father, you must immediately execute both mother and child." But in the very next shocking second, the two drops of blood merged seamlessly as one, proving undeniable blood relation. Marcus stood completely speechless, unable to believe the evidence before his eyes as he violently knocked over the water basin in furious denial. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Someone must have tampered with this water. She absolutely cannot have borne such a monster for me." Noah spoke with stern authority. "Crown Prince, this water basin was prepared under my direct personal supervision. Are you daring to doubt me?" Marcus's face cycled through various shades of green and purple, unable to formulate any response. Seeing the child's parentage irrefutably confirmed, Tanya looked up and laughed with bitter, hysterical intensity. "Father is supremely wise. This is indeed the Crown Prince's biological child. It's precisely because you are impotent, your masculine essence completely depleted, that I had no choice but to drink that agonizing essence-locking medicine every single day for 49 consecutive days just to barely give birth to this child. At this point, you still dare to doubt my virtue and loyalty? Are you still remotely fit to be crown prince of this great nation?" These devastating words completely enraged Marcus, as he raised his hand to violently strike both mother and child. I immediately stepped forward to shield them protectively with my own body. Seeing me intervene, Marcus's eyes filled with even more concentrated hatred. Paying absolutely no heed to Noah's imposing presence, he snorted with cold contempt. "Do you dare interfere in my private family affairs? Stepmother, you couldn't even bear a single son yourself. You and Tanya are both utterly useless barren wenches." Initially already disappointed in his crown prince, Noah could no longer tolerate hearing him speak so disrespectfully and crudely to me before the entire assembled court. He shouted with imperial fury, "Unfilial son! No one may show such blatant disrespect to the Empress in my presence." He immediately ordered Marcus dragged away by palace guards. I looked at Noah with profound gratitude shining in my eyes. He was always like this, steadfastly standing by my side protectively, no matter the circumstances or opposition. Tears glimmered in my eyes, but suddenly my chest felt painfully constricted as if something was lodged there, and I couldn't help but retch violently. Noah immediately stepped forward with deep concern as I retched several more times. The imperial physician waiting nearby quickly approached to feel my pulse, his expression showing initial joy that rapidly transformed to grave seriousness, remaining silent for an uncomfortably long time. "Imperial physician, what exactly is wrong with the Empress?" Noah demanded anxiously. The imperial physician responded hesitantly, "Your Majesty, Her Majesty is with child again." "What? This is wonderfully joyful news. Why the obvious hesitation and concern?" The imperial physician rubbed his head nervously. "Your Majesty, Her Majesty's pulse suggests not just a single child. It may be twins or possibly even more. My limited abilities prevent me from determining the exact number at this early stage." Noah's eyes widened dramatically. He never expected that at over 36 years of age, he could still make me pregnant again, and this time with multiple children simultaneously. I remained calm and composed as usual. My constitution was naturally and uniquely suited for pregnancy, so carrying multiples was perfectly normal for someone like me. In the previous life, Tanya had even successfully borne healthy triplets for the second prince. Noah was absolutely overjoyed, immediately carrying me back to the palace to rest with the utmost care. Fearing that Marcus would attempt to harm her vulnerable child, Tanya humbly requested permission to remain in the palace for her postpartum confinement period, which Noah graciously granted. Only Marcus remained standing completely dazed in the throne hall, murderous intent blazing dangerously in his dark eyes. During my first pregnancy, he hadn't been overly worried because he still firmly believed Tanya would eventually conceive and provide him heirs. Moreover, I had only carried a single child then. But this time was multiples. Who could possibly know if princes would be among them? Furthermore, his devastating inability to father children had been publicly exposed before the entire court. If I successfully delivered healthy children, his precarious position as crown prince definitely couldn't be maintained under any circumstances. Therefore, he secretly clenched his fists with renewed determination. He absolutely could not allow me to successfully bear any princes. Because I carried multiples, the palace servants became even more extraordinarily careful and vigilant, making it essentially impossible for Marcus to find any opportunity whatsoever to act against me. Soon my delivery day arrived once again. The familiar, intense pain struck powerfully, and I gritted my teeth to endure it stoically. Perhaps because I carried multiple babies, this time the pain proved considerably more severe than my previous experience. Before long, perspiration completely soaked my entire body. When the midwife pressed her hands firmly on my distended belly, I trembled violently from the unexpectedly sharp pain. The strange, wrong sensation made me suddenly alert with terrifying clarity. I struggled desperately to raise my head and look closely at the midwife, my heart turning cold with dread. The person before me was completely unfamiliar, clearly not the experienced midwife who had skillfully attended my previous delivery. Moreover, that particular pressing motion was fundamentally wrong. It obviously wasn't meant to assist with delivery, but rather to deliberately push the fetuses toward stillbirth within my womb. I screamed in absolute panic. "Who are you? What exactly are you trying to do to me?" The false midwife was clearly surprised by my sudden, pointed question, but she attempted to maintain her deceptive composure. "Your Majesty, please calm yourself. This servant naturally came to assist with your delivery. Please exert just a bit more strength and the birth will be successfully complete." I remained deeply uneasy and suspicious. Just as I was about to call loudly for help, I caught the unmistakable murderous glint in her cold eyes, followed immediately by her grabbing the sharp delivery scissors and stabbing straight toward my vulnerable belly with lethal intent. I don't know where I found the desperate strength, but I kicked her away forcefully and shouted toward the door with all my remaining might. This delivery had come suddenly, before the labor pains properly began. I knew Noah had been detained by urgent diplomatic matters with foreign envoys and couldn't return in time. But why wasn't there a single palace servant stationed outside my door as protocol demanded? Seeing the assassin midwife already struggling back to her feet, still gripping the deadly scissors and lunging toward me with renewed murderous intent, my heart sank with desperate finality. Could it possibly be that even in this lifetime, I truly couldn't escape this terrible calamity? I clutched my belly protectively, struggling to endure the overwhelming pain, desperately backing away toward the corner. As the scissors were mere inches from piercing my chest fatally, I closed my eyes tightly in resignation, but the expected agonizing pain never materialized. I opened my eyes in shock to see Tanya covered in streaming blood, shielding me protectively with her own body while the assassin midwife lay bleeding profusely on the floor, clearly fatally wounded. Tanya spoke with urgent concern. "Visha, don't be afraid. I'm here now. You're safe." I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore. Tears fell like torrential rain. I truly never expected that at this critical life and death moment, it would be Tanya, of all people, who would sacrifice herself to save both me and my unborn children. Before I could express my overwhelming gratitude, intense pain surged over me in crushing waves. I was about to give birth immediately. Tanya helped me onto the bed despite her own serious injuries, gritting her teeth with determination to assist with the dangerous delivery. "Don't be afraid, Visha. Your Majesty is blessed by heaven. There will definitely be a safe delivery for both mother and children." Encouraged by her brave words, I exerted all my remaining strength, pushing with absolute determination. A bright flash exploded before my eyes, and I heard a newborn's vigorous cry echoing powerfully. "Saved! We're saved! It's a prince! Visha, congratulations, Your Majesty!" Tanya exclaimed with genuine joy. "What? There's another one coming. Also a prince." She hurriedly wrapped both babies and carefully placed them beside me, but I still felt something wasn't right. My belly seemed to still have something distinctly moving inside. "Sister, please check again carefully. I think there are still more babies in my belly." She immediately bent down to examine me with experienced hands. "Indeed!" she exclaimed in absolute amazement. "There are more coming out right now. 2 little princesses." As soon as she finished speaking those words, familiar, beloved footsteps sounded urgently outside and the chamber door was pushed open forcefully. It was Noah, his face pale with fear and concern. "Visha, I'm so terribly late. You've borne me 4 beautiful, lovely children. Heaven truly has eyes. You've worked so incredibly hard, my beloved." He surveyed the chaotic, blood-soaked scene covering the floor, his handsome face filled with profound remorse and heartache. I reached out weakly to smooth his deeply furrowed brow, leaning gratefully into his solid chest and falling into exhausted sleep. When I finally awakened, the first person I saw was still Noah, exactly as I'd hoped. After hearing the complete, horrifying account of what transpired during my delivery, he had been utterly terrified, staying faithfully by my bedside day and night, absolutely refusing to leave no matter how anyone tried to persuade him otherwise. Seeing me finally open my eyes, he immediately held me tightly in his protective embrace, his coarse beard scraping against my face, itchy and prickly, yet somehow profoundly reassuring and comforting. "Visha, I almost lost you forever. I couldn't bear it." His voice broke with emotion. I also held him tightly, gently patting his broad back soothingly. "I'm here. We're safe. Everything is well now." Later, Noah issued an imperial edict to thoroughly and exhaustively investigate what had actually happened that day. Though the assassin midwife was already dead, investigators still successfully traced everything back to the true mastermind behind the entire murderous plot. Unexpectedly, though perhaps not surprisingly, it was Marcus orchestrating everything. Fearing desperately that my bearing legitimate sons would irreversibly threaten his crown prince position, he had deliberately taken calculated advantage of the foreign envoys detaining Noah with urgent diplomatic matters. Then he systematically dismissed all the loyal servants stationed in my palace, leaving me completely isolated and vulnerable. His original diabolical intention had been to have the assassin midwife secretly switch my healthy children with prepared stillborn fetuses, causing me to lose all imperial favor and protection. Who could have known that complications arose midway, forcing the increasingly desperate midwife to risk directly killing me to permanently eliminate all evidence? Fortunately, Tanya had happened to overhear a suspicious conversation between Marcus and his criminal subordinate, arriving just in the nick of time to courageously save both me and the precious children. Marcus still stubbornly denied all guilt, consistently and vehemently claiming complete innocence. Only when his personal guard was brought forward for direct confrontation did he finally fall into defeated silence. This time, Noah became completely and utterly disappointed in Marcus, immediately furiously deposing him from crown prince status and demoting him to nothing more than a common citizen. As for Tanya, because of her tremendous merit in heroically saving members of the imperial family, Noah specially granted her an official divorce from Marcus and elevated her to the honored rank of county princess, additionally giving her the precious right to freely remarry whomever she chose. After Marcus was publicly deposed in disgrace, all the court ministers unanimously petitioned with great enthusiasm, urgently pressing Noah to formally establish a new heir to secure the succession. Therefore, Noah made the elder of my twin sons the new crown prince, formally securing the line of succession. Noah cherished all these children with overwhelming devotion, personally teaching them classical poetry, elegant calligraphy, ritual propriety, and martial archery. He proved no different from the most loving, exemplary father imaginable. The children were also extraordinarily intelligent and remarkably clever, always clustering adoringly around their parents' feet, in scenes of perfect harmony and happiness. Ever since I had successfully borne 4 healthy children, after each subsequent intimate encounter, Noah would personally drink contraceptive medicine himself rather than making me consume it. Initially, I felt somewhat hurt by this, even angrily snatching his medicine bowl away one evening. "Doesn't your majesty want more children with Visha?" Noah smiled with infinite tenderness and understanding. "My darling Visha, you're not a breeding sow. Pregnancy and childbirth are far too physically exhausting and dangerous. I absolutely can't bear to make you suffer through that ordeal again. I treasure you far too much." My heart melted completely, warmed to the very depths. Actually, I understood his true feelings perfectly. He was genuinely terrified of potentially losing me during another difficult delivery. Before long, all the children grew up healthy and strong. When the crown prince came of proper age, Noah immediately and voluntarily abdicated the throne, taking my hand to travel to a beautiful leisure palace for peaceful, happy retirement. From this moment forward, the world existed in peaceful tranquility, and we would live together in perfect contentment until the very end of our days. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories every day. Thanks for watching.